Ancient engineers created computers long before the digital age. We are uncovering 25 astonishing mechanisms that predicted modern technology. You will discover a hidden history of computation that rewrites everything you thought you knew about ancient innovation. How did a 2,000-year-old Greek device calculate planetary movements with precision? What secret knowledge allowed Chinese engineers to build a chariot that always pointed south? This journey reveals how gears and levers once processed information in ways that would not be seen again for centuries. Are you ready to see the digital world in an entirely new light? Beneath the Mediterranean waves, a shipwreck held a secret for 2,000 years. Spongedivers off the coast of Antikythera in 1901 stumbled upon a corroded lump of bronze and wood, initially overlooked amidst statues and pottery. It was only years later, when an archaeologist noticed a gear wheel embedded in the rock-like crust, that the world realized its true significance. This was the Antikythera Mechanism, and it would shatter our understanding of ancient technology. X-ray and CT scans decades later revealed a complex clockwork of at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, housed in a wooden frame no larger than a shoebox. This was not a simple calendar. It was a precision instrument of staggering genius, an analog computer designed to predict the movements of the heavens. Researchers like Dr. Tony Freeth have spent years deciphering its secrets, uncovering a system of differential gearing so advanced that nothing comparable would appear again until the 19th century. This intricate arrangement of gears allowed the mechanism to calculate the ever-changing positions of the Sun and Moon, accounting for their elliptical orbits. By simply turning a hand crank, an ancient user could see the Moon's phase, predict lunar and solar eclipses, and even track the cycle of the ancient Olympic Games. It was, in essence, a portable universe made of metal, a celestial calculator that brought the cosmos down to human hands. The sheer complexity of this 2,000-year-old device forces a profound question. If the ancient Greeks could engineer something this sophisticated, what other forms of computational knowledge have been lost to the sea, or simply to time itself? That same spirit of mechanical genius was flourishing in the great city of Alexandria. Picture a small, self-contained wooden stage before an audience of astonished onlookers. At a signal, the doors would swing open on their own, and a troupe of wooden puppets would enact an entire mythic play. For 10 full minutes, these automata would move with purpose, sailing across the stage, lighting fires, and even performing a ritual sacrifice, all without a single human pulling a string in view. This was the automated theater of Heron of Alexandria, a one-man performance engineered in the 1st century AD. The magic was not in sorcery, but in a meticulously planned system of ropes, axles, and heavy weights. Wrapped around a central axle, a long, knotted rope acted as the program. As the axle turned, released by a falling weight, each knot would trigger a different part of the sequence, pulling on specific strings to open a door, move a puppet, or rotate a scene. By simply rearranging the order and placement of the knots on that main rope, Heron could create an entirely new play, effectively reprogramming his mechanical actors for a different story. This was entertainment driven by sequential logic, a physical precursor to the if-then commands that power modern software. Heron's theater forces a fascinating reconsideration. We often think of programming as a purely digital concept, but here was a tangible, mechanical system making complex decisions and executing a timed sequence of events. The line between a knotted rope and a line of code begins to blur, suggesting that the fundamental principles of automation are far older than silicon. While Heron's theater was performing in the Mediterranean, across the world a different kind of automaton was navigating the imperial courts of ancient China. Legends speak of the Yellow Emperor using a magical chariot to guide his army through a thick fog, a vehicle that featured a figure which always pointed south no matter which way the chariot turned. This was no myth. By the 3rd century, historical texts described the south-pointing chariot in astonishing mechanical detail. It was a large, ornate carriage, and atop it stood a wooden figure with an outstretched arm perpetually aimed toward the southern direction. The true marvel was not the statue itself, but the hidden system of gears that drove its unwavering sense of direction. Each time the chariot turned, its wheels would rotate at different speeds. A brilliant differential gear system, a complex arrangement of interlocking toothed wheels, would automatically calculate this difference in rotation. Through precise gear ratios, the mechanism would then apply a counter-rotation to the figure on top, perfectly cancelling out the chariot's turn and keeping the pointer aligned with true south. Think of it as the ancient equivalent of the differential in your car, which allows the wheels to spin at different speeds around a corner. The chariot used that same fundamental principle not for propulsion, but for information processing. It was a mechanical computer solving a problem of spatial orientation in real time, an early form of what we now call inertial navigation. This was a machine that could, in a sense, feel its own movement and correct for it, all without any digital sensors or magnetic compasses. The engineering precision required to craft those gears, to get the ratios exactly right so the figure would not gradually drift off course, is staggering. It hints at a workshop tradition of immense sophistication, where mechanical solutions were developed for problems so complex we would later solve them with silicon chips and gyroscopes. How many other such brilliant devices were built, only to be lost when that knowledge faded away centuries after Archimedes walked the streets of Syracuse? The Roman orator Cicero would write of a device that filled him with profound wonder. He described a gloriously intricate sphere of glass and bronze, constructed by the great mathematician himself, which replicated the motions of the cosmos. This was the Archimedes Planetarium, a working model of the universe built around 250 years before the Common Era. Ancient accounts detail how this mechanical marvel used a complex system of precisely calibrated gears, likely driven by water power, to move bronze spheres representing the Sun, the Moon, and the 5 known planets. Each celestial body traveled along its own path at its own unique speed, mirroring the complex dance observed in the night sky. This was more than a simple orrery displaying basic orbits. The machine could predict solar and lunar eclipses with startling accuracy and demonstrated the relative speeds of the wandering stars with a precision that seemed almost magical. Archimedes had not merely built a beautiful display, he had engineered a physical simulation of a vastly complex natural system. He took the abstract mathematics of celestial motion and translated them into tangible, moving parts, creating a machine whose operation validated a scientific understanding of the cosmos. In doing so, he established a fundamental principle we still rely on today. To understand a system, sometimes you must first build a working model of it. This is the very essence of modern computer modeling, where we simulate everything from global climate patterns to the collision of galaxies inside a digital space. Archimedes was pioneering that same scientific method, only his computer was made of bronze and powered by water, not silicon and electricity. His planetarium stands as a monumental leap in thought, a bold attempt to capture the logic of the universe within the turning of a gear. Long before gears turned in Greece, another civilization was computing the heavens with nothing more than wet clay. In the ruins of ancient Mesopotamia, archaeologists uncovered thousands of cuneiform tablets, their surfaces covered in the sharp, wedge-shaped writing of the Babylonians. At first glance, they appeared to be routine administrative records, but a closer look revealed something extraordinary. These were not simple lists of kings or harvests. They were instruction manuals for the sky, containing step-by-step mathematical procedures for predicting the motions of planets and the precise timing of eclipses. The Babylonians were running algorithms on tablets of clay. Their methods were purely arithmetic, a series of additions, subtractions, multiplications, and divisions, but they were arranged in a specific, unvarying sequence. A scribe would begin with a known planetary position, then apply a set of rules to calculate its future location. The instructions were so precise that they even included conditional logic. If a certain value was reached, then the scribe was directed to a different set of calculations, effectively creating an if-then statement etched in stone. This was not a physical machine like the Antikythera device. This was a conceptual computer where the human mind and the clay tablet worked in tandem to execute a programmed sequence. The algorithm itself was the invention. Think of it like a recipe where following each step in exact order guarantees the desired outcome. The Babylonians had discovered that the complex patterns of the cosmos could be broken down into a series of simple, repeatable calculations. They encoded the logic of the heavens into a language of numbers, creating a predictive technology that was entirely abstract. This reveals a different path to computational thinking, one built not from gears and levers, but from pure, structured thought. It forces us to ask a profound question. What is the true essence of a computer? Is it the physical hardware, or is it the logical instructions that make it intelligent? The Babylonians, programming the sky with a stylus 2,000 years ago, seem to have believed it was the latter. The rhythmic drip of water was not just a measure of time in the ancient world, it was a trigger for spectacle. In the Great Library of Alexandria, a visitor would not merely check a sundial. They might be startled by the sudden blast of a mechanical trumpet, or watch a small bronze bird spin and chirp at the start of a new hour. These were the Greek water clocks or clepsydras, and they were far more than simple timers. They were the smart devices of their era, using the relentless flow of water to power an orchestra of automated events. At the heart of these marvels was a simple principle turned complex. Water would steadily fill a container, raising a float connected to a system of gears and levers. This was the clock's processor, translating the constant volume of water into the precise passage of time. But the genius was in the output. As the float rose, it would eventually trigger a catch. This release could send a ball rolling down a chime, cause a figurine to pop out and point at the current hour, or sound that startling trumpet. Some clocks even featured entire parades of figures that would emerge and perform at designated intervals, creating a public display of mechanical theater synchronized perfectly with the time of day. Perhaps the most advanced feature was their programmability. The length of an hour changes with the seasons, longer in summer and shorter in winter. Ancient engineers accounted for this by creating adjustable outflows or interchangeable gear sets. A custodian of the clock could recalibrate the entire mechanism, effectively reprogramming its rate of timekeeping to match the shifting calendar. This was a machine whose internal logic could be modified for different conditions, a direct precursor to the adjustable settings on any modern digital clock. This integration of automation into the daily fabric of life is what feels so strikingly modern. We are surrounded by devices that chirp, flash, and notify us. The Alexandrian water clock was doing the same thing 2,000 years ago, transforming an abstract measurement into a multi-sensory experience. It reminds us that the desire for technology to not just serve us, but to announce its service with a flourish, is a very ancient impulse indeed. The steady flow of water and the turning of gears found a sacred purpose in the high deserts of Persia. 7th-century engineers there harnessed the relentless wind to power something extraordinary: automated prayer wheels. Historical accounts describe tall, elegantly crafted spires topped with rotating cylinders inscribed with holy texts. When the wind blew, it would catch carefully designed sails, setting in motion a complex internal gear train. This was not a simple whirligig spinning at the whim of a breeze. The mechanism incorporated a brilliant regulating device called an escapement, which used a weighted pendulum to catch and release the gears at a steady rate. No matter how fiercely the wind gusted, the prayer wheel would maintain a constant, reverent rotation. Each turn was counted, each revolution considered an automated offering, a mechanical act of devotion recorded by the machine itself. In some larger installations, the same gear train could trigger bells to chime at specific intervals or even scroll through long parchment texts for public reading, creating a self-operating spiritual display. This represents a profound leap in technological thought. Here was a self-regulating system, a machine that could take a chaotic, variable input like wind and transform it into a precise, repetitive output. It anticipated the core principle of the Industrial Revolution, where governors would regulate steam engines to maintain constant speed. The Persian engineers had created a form of spiritual computation, where natural energy was processed through gears to produce a countable, ritual result. The very act of prayer, a deeply human intention, was being automated by a machine that never tired, never forgot, and never lost count. This blending of faith and engineering challenges our modern assumptions. We often see technology and spirituality as separate realms, but here they were seamlessly fused. The drive to automate repetitive tasks did not begin on the factory floor, but perhaps at the altar, with a prayer wheel turning faithfully in the wind, counting its blessings one precise gear tooth at a time. The relentless wind of Persia gives way to the ordered roads of the Roman Empire, where time itself became a portable commodity. Among the ruins of ancient military outposts and villas, archaeologists have unearthed small, intricately crafted bronze discs, often no larger than the palm of a hand. These are Roman portable sundials, and they represent a leap in personal technology. A traveler marching from the sun-baked hills of Syria to the misty forests of Britannia would face a problem. A fixed sundial calibrated for one city would give the wrong time in another due to the changing angle of the sun. Roman engineers solved this with breathtaking elegance. These handheld devices featured a central gnomon, the part that casts the shadow, that could be tilted and adjusted to match the local latitude. The bronze face was not a simple circle, but an engraved grid of lines and curves, a complex coordinate system for mapping the sun's path. A sliding scale, often marked with the names of major cities, allowed the user to align the sundial's internal logic with their specific geographical location. By configuring these movable parts, a Roman official or merchant could effectively recalibrate the device, transforming it from a simple shadow caster into a sophisticated computer for local time. Some of the most advanced models went even further. They incorporated tiny gears and rotating disks to track the phases of the moon or to account for the changing length of daylight throughout the year. One remarkable example, the Aphrodite sundial, even included a built-in calendrical scale. This was not just a timepiece, it was a compact, mechanical database storing information about celestial cycles and geographical data, all compressed into a beautiful, pocket-sized instrument. The user was not a passive observer, but an active participant, inputting their location and the date to receive an accurate output of local time. This concept of a user-configurable system, one that processes multiple environmental variables to deliver a customized result, is the very foundation of modern handheld devices. The smartphone in your pocket performs the same fundamental operation, using GPS and network data instead of a sliding bronze scale. The Roman portable sundial was a tangible expression of a world being unified by information, a world where time and space could be computed on the go, one carefully adjusted shadow at a time. Descending into the cavernous depths of Chand Bayori feels like entering a stone computer built for water. With over 3,500 symmetrical steps cascading down 13 stories, this Indian stepwell is not merely a reservoir. It is a monumental machine for managing a precious resource. The true genius of these structures lies hidden beneath the stunning geometry, in the elaborate networks of sluice gates, channels, and calibrated outlets carved directly into the stone. These were not passive containers, they were active distribution systems, processing the variable input of monsoon rains into a reliable, scheduled output for an entire community. The system operated on a principle of programmable logic. Village elders or water managers would decide on a seasonal allocation plan, a set of rules determining how much water would go to irrigation, to drinking reservoirs, and to ritual bathing tanks. This plan was then physically encoded into the stepwell itself. By opening or closing specific sluice gates at predetermined heights, they could route water along different channels. A gate opened at one level would send water to the fields. A gate closed at another would reserve a higher pool for the temple. The sequence of these actions could be changed from season to season, effectively reprogramming the stepwell's priorities based on the current needs and the amount of water stored. This was resource management automated by gravity and geometry. The stepwell took the environmental data of water level and translated it through its engineered pathways into decisions about allocation. It processed a natural resource according to a stored set of instructions, making it a powerful, tangible computer for civic logistics. The stones themselves were making calculations, deciding where the water should flow next. This ancient solution to a universal problem reveals a profound truth. Long before we had digital networks managing our power grids or water supplies, humanity was already building physical systems that could do the same thing, using the relentless pull of gravity as their processing power. Deep within the humid jungles of Central America, a different kind of time computer was operating, one that tracked not just days but entire ages. The Mayan calendar was a masterpiece of interlocking cycles, a complex system where a 260-day sacred calendar spun alongside a 365-day solar year, all within a grander cycle known as the long count. To manage this celestial clockwork, Mayan priests likely used physical computing devices. While no single mechanism survives fully intact, archaeologists have pieced together clues from artifacts and codices. They point to the use of counting boards with movable pebbles or seeds, acting as physical registers for tracking numerical values across different cycles. Other evidence suggests rotating discs made of wood or bark paper, inscribed with day names and numbers that could be turned against one another to find the correlation between cycles. These were not passive calendars, they were active calculators. A priest could input a current date from one cycle, and by manipulating these physical components, compute its corresponding position in all the other cycles, predicting future conjunctions or eclipses with remarkable accuracy. This process of correlating different data sets is the very essence of a modern database relationship. Think of a simple spreadsheet where a change in one cell automatically updates linked cells in another table. The Mayan system was doing the same thing, using rotating disks and counting beads instead of digital formulas. They understood that time was not a single thread, but a fabric of woven cycles, and they built tangible machines to navigate its complex patterns. This was mathematics made physical, a system for processing temporal data that allowed them to plan ceremonies, direct agriculture, and essentially run their society on a schedule computed from the stars. The sheer ambition of their temporal architecture forces a humbling thought. We live in an age of digital calendars that sync seamlessly across devices, yet the underlying logic of correlating multiple streams of time was perfected over a millennium ago, computed not with light but with cord and carved wood. Music itself became a form of computation in the hands of ancient Greek engineers. They built instruments that could play entire compositions without a human musician, powered by the same principles of air and water that drove their clocks. The most magnificent of these was the hydraules, a powerful water organ whose notes were not commanded by a keyboard, but by a pre-programmed cylinder. Imagine a large, rotating drum studded with precisely placed pins. As this cylinder turned, driven by a steady flow of water or a heavy weight, the pins would engage a series of levers. Each lever controlled a valve that would release a burst of air into a specific pipe, producing a musical note. The arrangement of the pins was the score, a physical map of the melody. To change the song, an operator did not need to be a skilled musician. They simply had to swap out the pinned cylinder for another, or carefully rearrange the pins on the existing drum. This was reprogramming in its most tangible form. The machine was an automated orchestra capable of performing complex, repetitive sequences with perfect accuracy, filling a temple or an amphitheater with mechanically generated harmony. Other devices used rotating disks with cut-out patterns or weighted systems that dropped onto levers in a timed sequence, all creating a predetermined auditory output. The sequence of sounds was literally hard-coded into the hardware. This is the direct ancestor of the modern music box and, more profoundly, of digital music sequencing. In a digital audio workstation today, a composer places notes on a grid, and the computer plays them back in that exact order. The ancient Greeks were doing the same thing, using pins on a cylinder instead of pixels on a screen. The physical configuration of the machine determined the artistic output, proving that the drive to automate creativity, to encode beauty into a reproducible system, is an impulse that reaches back over 2,000 years. The silent darkness of an Egyptian night was not a void but a vast ticking clock. Inside the tombs of pharaohs, far from the desert winds, archaeologists discovered intricate diagrams painted on coffin lids and chamber walls. These were not mere decorations. They were the blueprints for a celestial computing system known as the star clock. The earliest versions were simple diagonal tables, a grid of lines that mapped the rising of 36 specific star groups or decans throughout the year. A priest would hold a plumb line, a weighted string, and align it with his own eye and a specific star. By seeing which row of the grid the star corresponded to, he could read the hour of the night with startling precision. This was an observational computer where the human eye and the string acted as the input sensor, and the painted grid served as the pre-programmed database, outputting a unit of time. The system evolved into breathtaking mechanical sophistication. Some devices used aligned stone sighting tubes fixed within temple walls, precisely oriented to watch for the transit of a key star across the meridian. Others may have employed rotating star maps, disks of papyrus or wood that could be turned to match the date, creating an adjustable interface with the night sky. The true genius of the diagonal star clocks was their solution to a fundamental problem. The length of nighttime changes with the seasons, so a seasonal hour is longer in summer and shorter in winter. The diagonal grid elegantly compensated for this. As the year progressed, a different deccan star would mark the same nighttime hour, its position shifting diagonally down the chart. This created a self-correcting system that effectively divided any night, long or short, into 12 equal parts. The Egyptians were not just observing the stars, they were processing their movements through a structured, repeatable method to extract reliable data. They had built a computer whose processor was the rotating cosmos, whose memory was a painted grid, and whose output was the time, computed nightly for the needs of ritual, agriculture, and the journey of the soul. In the deep silence of the desert, they found a way to make the stars themselves speak the hours. The silent precision of the Egyptian star clocks gives way to a bronze vessel that could feel the very earth tremble. In the year 132, during the Han Dynasty, the brilliant inventor Zhang Heng unveiled a machine of almost prophetic power. Historical records describe a magnificent bronze urn adorned with 8 dragons, each holding a bronze ball in its jaws. Below them, 8 bronze frogs sat with their mouths open, waiting. This was the world's first seismoscope, a device designed not just to sense an earthquake, but to point toward its origin. The mechanism inside was a work of genius. At its heart was an inverted pendulum, a heavy mass suspended delicately within the vessel. When a seismic wave, even one too faint for anyone to feel, traveled through the ground and into the urn, this pendulum would swing. But it was not a simple back and forth motion. The internal design channeled that energy with incredible precision. The pendulum would knock a lever connected to only one of the 8 dragon heads. That specific dragon would release its ball, which would clatter down into the waiting mouth of the frog directly below, creating a loud, unmistakable signal. The direction of that frog indicated the compass bearing from which the earthquake waves had arrived. This was automated data reporting in its most elegant form. The machine sensed its environment, processed the physical input through a sophisticated mechanical filter, and delivered a clear, actionable output. Imagine a court official hearing that single bronze ball drop in the night. He would know not only that an earthquake had occurred hundreds of miles away, but he could also dispatch aid directly toward the affected region. Zhang Heng's device did not rely on any electronic sensors or digital telemetry. It used pure mechanical intelligence to translate a hidden force of nature into a simple, directional message. This was more than an early warning system. It was a physical algorithm for understanding the Earth, a testament to the idea that the world itself could be made to speak, if only you knew how to build the right machine to listen. A new chapter in mechanical programming unfolded in the 13th century, not in Europe, but within the brilliant workshops of the Islamic world. The engineer Al-Jazari compiled his book of knowledge of ingenious mechanical devices, a text that reads like a user manual for a lost world of automata. He described a mechanical band that floated on a lake, its 4 robot musicians, a drummer, a flautist, and 2 cymbal players performing for guests at a royal party. They were not simple statues. Hidden inside their boat was a complex gear train connected to a rotating camshaft, a carefully shaped axle with protruding lobes. As this shaft turned, driven by water power, each lobe would push a specific lever at a precise moment, causing a robot's arm to strike a drum, lift a flute, or clash a pair of cymbals. The sequence of movements was dictated entirely by the physical shape and placement of the cams along the shaft. This was a hardware program, a physical timeline of actions etched into metal. But the true innovation was its programmability. For a different musical performance, an engineer did not have to build a new band. He could simply detach the old camshaft and install a new one with a different arrangement of lobes, effectively loading a new song into the mechanical ensemble. Other automata were even more interactive. Al-Jazari designed a waitress automaton that would serve drinks, a process involving a series of timed actions, and a peacock fountain with servants that offered soap and towels. These devices used pegged cylinders, similar to the Greek water organ, but with a focus on complex physical sequences rather than just sound. The pegs would trigger levers that controlled water valves, causing figures to move in a lifelike multi-step dance. This was more than mere entertainment. It was a sophisticated exploration of sequential control, timing, and mechanical logic. Al-Jazari's machines were processing a simple energy source like flowing water and translating it through their internal programming into a complex, timed performance. They anticipated the core principle of modern robotics, where a series of programmed commands dictates a sequence of precise physical actions. His work stands as a monumental peak in medieval computational thought, a world where music, service, and spectacle were all computed not with code, but with cams, pegs, and the steady flow of water. Even the most sacred decisions of democracy were once processed by machines. In the bustling assemblies of ancient Greece and Rome, where the fate of leaders and laws was decided, engineers had devised mechanical systems to count the collective will. Far from a simple show of hands, these were sophisticated devices for secret balloting and impartial tallying. Voters would receive identical bronze tokens, often with a solid center for one verdict and a hollow one for another. They would then approach a guarded voting station, dropping their chosen token into one of two urns. The true innovation was not the token itself, but what happened next. Some assemblies used a large, balanced scale. An official would pour the tokens from one urn into a pan on one side, and tokens from the other urn into the opposing pan. The side that dipped lower revealed the majority verdict instantly and visually, a mechanical calculation of public opinion. Other systems employed elaborate sorting machines, wooden boards with chutes and compartments that could separate and count dozens of tokens at once, processing multiple votes simultaneously to deliver a final tally. This mechanization was not just for efficiency, it was a shield against corruption. The use of identical, officially minted tokens prevented fraudulent ballots. The weighted containers and balancing scales ensured a fair count, making it nearly impossible to tamper with the results without being detected. This was computational democracy in its most tangible form. The machine was a neutral third party, an unbiased processor that took the raw, often passionate, input of the people and translated it into a clear, indisputable output. It removed human bias from the final count, building trust in the system itself. These ancient devices embody a principle we still strive for today. How do you create a transparent, trustworthy system for making collective decisions? The answer, 2,000 years ago, was not just in the law, but in the clever arrangement of bronze and wood, a physical guarantee that every single vote would be weighed and counted with perfect mechanical justice. High in the Andes, an empire was built on knots. The Inca civilization, without a known system of writing, managed a vast territory stretching thousands of miles, all recorded on intricate arrays of colored cords known as quipus. To the untrained eye, these tangled strings might look like decorative tassels, but they were in fact a sophisticated and portable data storage system, a physical computer for running an empire. Each quipu was a complex language of information. A main cord served as the backbone, with multiple pendant cords hanging from it. The data was encoded through a precise system. The type of knot represented a numerical digit with figure 8 knots for ones, long knots for numbers 2 through 9, and the absence of a knot signifying 0. The position of the knot on the cord indicated its place value, with the highest values placed nearest the main cord, but the system went far beyond simple numbers. The color of the cords, the spin and ply of the yarn, and even the material itself held specific meanings, allowing the Quipu to record census data, tax obligations, calendrical information, and the vast inventories of imperial storehouses. This was a database you could hold in your hands. The true processors of this system were the Quipu, the official knot keepers. These trained specialists did not merely read the quipus, they computed with them. By feeling and rearranging the knots, they could perform complex calculations, adding populations, subtracting tributes, and comparing harvest yields from different regions. They could cross-reference data by tracing cords of different colors, essentially running queries on a physical network of strings. Some researchers now believe that certain quipus may have encoded narrative information, recording stories, laws, and genealogies in a format that was tactile and mnemonic rather than alphabetic. This reveals a fundamentally different path to information processing. While other cultures etched symbols onto clay or papyrus, the Incas built a three-dimensional, tactile computing system. The Quipu was an alternative to the written document, a digital system in the truest sense, where information was broken down into discrete, countable units of knots. It forces us to reconsider what we mean by writing and computation, suggesting that the drive to encode reality into structured data can take forms far beyond ink and parchment, woven instead into the very fibers of a cord. Centuries before the first lines of code were written, people were already thinking like computers across a game board. In the royal tombs of Ur, archaeologists found beautiful inlaid game boards dating back over 4,500 years. This was no simple pastime. The royal game of Ur, along with its Egyptian counterpart, Senet, were complex systems of strategy and chance that required a very specific kind of mental processing. Players navigated a set path, but their moves were governed by pyramidal dice or knucklebones that introduced a random element. Every turn presented a computational problem. You had to weigh the probabilities of your next roll against the current positions of all the pieces on the board. Do you move a piece to safety, or do you risk a capture to gain a strategic advantage? Each decision created a branching path of possible futures, a mental map of cause and effect that players learned to navigate intuitively. This was a living decision tree, a probabilistic algorithm played out in wood and stone. The rules themselves formed a rigid computational structure. They were the program that governed the game's logic, defining legal moves, victory conditions, and the consequences of every action. By playing, individuals were not just entertaining themselves, they were training their minds to think in steps, to process variables, and to optimize outcomes within a constrained system. It was a form of cognitive calisthenics. The randomness of the dice taught them to calculate odds, while the fixed board forced them to plan several moves ahead, anticipating their opponent's responses. This was computational thinking in its purest, most accessible form, embedded not in a temple or a machine, but in a common cultural ritual. These games reveal that the fundamental principles of computation, probability, and strategic logic were being explored and internalized long before they were ever formalized by mathematicians. The board was a classroom, and every move was a lesson in processing information. Beneath the sun-scorched plains of ancient Persia, an invisible computer was running, its processor made of earth and its calculations measured in water. These were the Qanats, vast underground aqueducts that tapped distant mountain aquifers and channeled the precious resource for miles across the desert. But the true genius was not in the tunnels themselves, but in the distribution stations that dotted their path, where mechanical devices enforced a precise and equitable schedule. At the heart of this system were the water dividers, stone chambers built at key junctions where the main channel split into smaller branches. Inside, a complex arrangement of fixed weirs and calibrated outlets acted like a mechanical algorithm. Each outlet was a specific size and shape, designed to deliver a predetermined percentage of the total flow to a different farm or village. This was not a random division. It was a hard-coded allocation of resources, a physical expression of a water-sharing agreement etched into stone. The system processed the single input of the main Qanat flow and delivered multiple proportional outputs, ensuring that every user received their fair share according to a pre-established formula. Some systems incorporated even more sophisticated computing. They used floating indicators, wooden floats connected to lever arms that would rise and fall with the water level in a main reservoir. As the float moved, it would adjust a gate or shift a slider, automatically increasing or decreasing the flow to certain channels based on the overall availability of water. In a season of plenty, the gates would open wider. In a time of drought, they would constrict, all without human intervention. This was an early form of feedback control, where the machine sensed its own input and self-regulated its output to maintain a stable, fair distribution. The Qanat masters who designed these systems were environmental programmers. They had encoded the rules of their society and the logic of their climate directly into the plumbing. The system itself computed the solution to a complex logistical problem, balancing multiple variables of supply, demand, and seasonal change. It was a sustainable, self-adjusting network that managed a scarce resource with a brilliance we are only now, in our age of digital smart grids, beginning to fully appreciate. The ancient Greeks did not just watch the stars, they measured them with machines of breathtaking precision. Long before the telescope, astronomers like Hipparchus and Ptolemy relied on instruments that were computers in their own right, transforming the night sky into columns of numbers. One of their most powerful tools was the dioptra, a device that looked like a small surveying transit. It featured a sighting tube mounted on a finely graduated circular scale. By aligning the tube with a star and reading its position on the scale, an astronomer could measure its angular distance from another celestial body with an accuracy that seems impossible for the era. This was not passive observation. The dioptra was actively processing visual data, using its calibrated geometry to output a precise numerical value. Another marvel was the triquetrum, an elegant instrument built from 3 rods arranged in a proportional triangle. One rod pointed directly at a celestial body, while the other 2 formed a vertical scale. By measuring the length along these scales, an astronomer could use the principles of similar triangles to calculate the actual distance to the moon or the relative sizes of planets. The physical design of the triquetrum literally embodied a trigonometric equation, its angles and lengths performing the calculation automatically as it was aimed at the sky. These instruments were the hardware for a specific kind of software, the mathematical relationships of geometry made manifest in brass and wood. To use a dioptra was to run a program for measuring angles. To operate a triquetrum was to execute an algorithm for determining distance. The computation happened not in the mind of the astronomer alone, but through his interaction with the machine's engineered form. This seamless fusion of tool and calculation, where the device itself is the equation, is a principle that drives our modern world. From the sextant that guided ships across oceans to the interferometers that detect gravitational waves today, we still build machines whose physical design is their intelligence. The Greeks understood that to know the cosmos, you first had to build a device that could think about it in the same way you did. A 30-foot tower of time and stars rose in 11th century China, a mechanical giant that dwarfed all that came before it. The astronomical clock tower engineered by Su Song was not merely a timekeeper, it was a full-scale simulation of the cosmos, powered by the relentless flow of water. Historical records describe a massive water wheel that served as the engine, but it was the escapement device that was the true stroke of genius. This mechanism, a complex pair of scoops and counterweights, caught and released the wheel tooth by tooth, transforming the chaotic energy of falling water into a perfectly steady, metered pulse. This tick-tock heartbeat was the clock's central processor, regulating every other function with unwavering precision. That power was then transmitted through a forest of gears and shafts to multiple display units. One armillary sphere, a nest of bronze rings, tracked the sun, moon, and planets as they moved across the sky. Inside the tower, a celestial globe studded with stars rotated in perfect sync with the real night sky above. By simply observing this indoor model, an astronomer could know the exact configuration of the heavens at any moment, day or night. The system even featured automated mannequins that would emerge from doors to strike bells and announce the hours with tablets inscribed with the time. This was a fully integrated information system. It computed celestial data, chronological data, and seasonal information all at once, presenting it on different interfaces for different users. The clock tower was a physical internet of astronomical knowledge, where a single power source and a single regulating mechanism drove a symphony of coordinated outputs. Su Song's masterpiece was more than a wonder. It was a working prototype of a modern planetarium, a building-sized computer that could model the universe in real time. Its existence forces a humbling realization. The ambition to create a single machine that could answer every question about time and space is not a modern dream, but an ancient one, once realized in wood and bronze over 9 centuries ago. The power of computation was not confined to temples and timekeeping. It was a decisive force on the battlefield. In the hands of a Roman artillery crew, a ballista was more than a massive crossbow. It was a system guided by mechanical calculation. Archaeological finds and engineering manuals like those of Vitruvius reveal that these war machines were equipped with sophisticated sighting devices. A gunner did not simply aim by eye. He consulted graduated scales etched into the weapon's frame, scales that correlated with pre-calculated firing tables. These tables, likely stored on rotating wooden or bronze discs, accounted for critical variables, the distance to the target, the weight of the stone or bolt, and even estimated wind conditions. By aligning a marker on the scale with the correct pre-computed setting on the disc, the crew could adjust the torsion of the ropes and the elevation of the arm to an optimal degree. This was a physical algorithm for launching a projectile. The device processed multiple inputs, distance, projectile mass, and environmental factors to output a single, precise firing solution. In the heat of a siege, there was no time for complex mathematics. The rotating disc served as a pre-loaded database of tactical answers, allowing a trained crew to deploy their weapon with devastating speed and accuracy. This represents a crucial evolution in computational thought. Here, calculation was not about understanding the cosmos or managing resources, but about solving an immediate, high-stakes problem with mechanical efficiency. The Roman Ballista calculator was a specialized computer designed for one purpose: to turn chaotic variables into a predictable and destructive outcome. It reminds us that the drive to automate complex decisions, to build machines that think so we don't have to in a moment of crisis, is an impulse as old as warfare itself. A Roman ballista crew calculated trajectories, but out on the open ocean, ancient mariners faced a far more complex computational problem. With no landmarks in sight, They had to compute their position using only the sun and stars, relying on a suite of ingenious handheld devices. The simplest of these was the camel, used by Arab navigators in the Indian Ocean. It was just a small wooden rectangle and a knotted string, yet it was a precise angle calculator. A sailor would hold one end of the string to his eye and slide the card until its edges lined up with the North Star and the horizon. The knot that rested at his nose indicated the latitude on a pre-calibrated scale, a direct physical computation of his north-south position on the planet. This was a one-function computer, elegant in its simplicity, but the ultimate portable computer of the ancient seas was the astrolabe. This intricate brass disc, often no larger than a saucer, was a masterpiece of condensed intelligence. Its face was a complex web of engraved lines, a flattened map of the celestial sphere specific to a user's latitude. The rotating components on top, called the retere, were a star chart with pointers for the brightest stars. A mariner would suspend the astrolabe, sight a star or the sun through its moving alidade or rule, and read its altitude from the graduated edge. This single observation was the input. Then, by turning the retere to match that day's date and the star's measured height, the device would unlock a flood of information. It could tell the local time with precision, determine the direction of Mecca for prayer, and most crucially, confirm a ship's latitude. The astrolabe processed spherical astronomy through physical manipulation, its engraved coordinates performing the complex trigonometric calculations that would otherwise require an expert mathematician and hours of work. It was a multi-purpose analog computer, a handheld observatory that transformed the chaos of the open sea into a solvable equation of position and time. These tools were the smartphones of their age, compact platforms that integrated sensory input with a stored database to deliver critical, life-saving outputs. They prove that the need for mobile, user-friendly computing is not a modern obsession, but a very ancient requirement for anyone daring to navigate the unknown. The warmth of a priest's torch could command the very stones of an Egyptian temple to part. Herodotus recorded this astonishing spectacle, describing massive doors that swung open on their own as clergy approached the inner sanctum, a miracle designed to demonstrate the power of the gods. The secret, however, was not magic but a brilliant application of physical computation. Hidden within the temple's thick stone walls were sealed bronze chambers. When a priest lit a ceremonial fire on a specific altar, the flames would heat the air inside these containers. As the air expanded, it created pressure, forcing water from a reservoir through a network of concealed pipes. This water would flow into a bucket, its increasing weight acting as the power source for the entire sequence. The descending bucket was connected to a system of ropes and pulleys, which translated that downward force into a rotational pull on the stone door pivots. The doors would swing inward with a slow, majestic grace, perfectly timed to the priest's arrival. This was sensor-based automation in its earliest form. The environmental input of heat triggered a cascade of mechanical events, a physical program that processed fire into motion. The system was a tangible algorithm. If fire is lit, then water moves, then weight descends, then doors open. For the worshippers, it was a divine miracle. For the engineers, it was a problem in pneumatic and hydraulic logic, a machine that used the fundamental properties of matter to create a powerful illusion. This integration of computation into the heart of religious experience reveals a profound truth. The drive to use technology to inspire awe, to automate wonder, is as ancient as civilization itself. The next time an automatic door slides open for you at a supermarket, remember that the principle was first perfected not for convenience, but for communion with the gods. The stage of ancient Greek drama was a machine for manufacturing wonder. When a playwright needed a god to descend from the heavens or a fallen hero to be revealed within a palace, they called upon a crew of backstage technicians and a suite of ingenious devices. The mechane was a sophisticated crane, its boom and winch system hidden high above the stage. It did not simply hoist an actor, it calculated his descent. Using a system of counterweights and ropes, the operators could lower a performer with a controlled, dignified grace, creating the illusion of a celestial being floating down to earth. The timing was everything, a physical program executed to coincide with a specific line of dialogue or a choral ode. On the ground, the ekiklema, a rolling platform, would be pushed through the central doors of the stage building. This was the reveal mechanism. After a violent event occurred offstage, the doors would open and the platform would roll forward, displaying the consequences to the audience in a sudden, dramatic tableau. The movement was a calculated reveal, a physical edit in the narrative controlled by a stagehand. Then there was the sound. The Brontean or thunder machine was an acoustic computer. One design involved pouring a cascade of stones into a resonating bronze jar, creating a crash with a specific duration and timbre. Another used a taut hide stretched over a large drum, with lead pellets rattling inside to simulate a rolling, ongoing rumble. Each sound effect was a product of precise engineering, designed to trigger a specific emotional response at a preordained moment. This was more than stagecraft, it was a form of integrated media processing. The winches, rolling platforms, and resonance chambers were all hardware executing a sequence, a show script translated into mechanical actions. The entire production was a live program, where the turning of a winch or the release of stones was a line of code made physical, computing awe and terror in the hearts of the audience. This ancient pursuit of spectacle through machinery reveals a timeless truth. The desire to use technology to tell a better story is a drive that connects the playwrights of Athens directly to the special effects wizards of Hollywood today. Even the most urgent military command could be intercepted, a fatal vulnerability that ancient generals solved with a strip of leather and a simple wooden rod. This was the Cytail, the legendary encryption device of the Spartan army. Its operation was a masterpiece of physical computation. A messenger would be given a baton of a specific, standardized diameter. A long, thin strip of leather was wound tightly around this rod in a continuous spiral. The commander would then write his message lengthwise along the rod, one letter on each complete turn of the leather. When the strip was unwound, the letters were scattered into a seemingly random sequence, an unreadable jumble. Only a soldier possessing an identical rod could rewrap the leather and align the letters back into their original, coherent order. The Cytail was more than a trick, it was a tangible algorithm for secrecy. The specific diameter of the rod was the key, the shared piece of information that made the encryption and decryption possible. Without that exact physical key, the message remained locked within its scrambled state. This principle of a shared secret is the very foundation of modern cryptography, from your email password to the secure connection of your bank's website. But the Spartans were not alone in this pursuit. The Romans developed cipher disks, two concentric circles of bronze or wood inscribed with alphabets that could be rotated against each other to create substitution ciphers. By aligning A with F, for instance, every letter in a message would be shifted 5 places, a process we now call a Caesar cipher. Other cultures carved substitution tables onto stone or clay tablets, creating permanent references for encoding diplomatic correspondence. These were not abstract ideas, they were physical computers built for a single, critical purpose: to process plain information into secure information and back again. They transformed language itself into a problem of logistics, one that required a specific mechanical key to solve. Each turn of a cipher disk or each winding of a leather strap was a calculation, a step in a process that ensured a message could only be read by its intended recipient. These ancient devices reveal that the struggle for privacy and secure communication is as old as civilization itself, and that the first firewalls were not made of code, but of wood and leather computed by hand. These scattered inventions were not isolated flashes of genius. They form a clear and continuous lineage, a technological family tree whose branches all lead directly to our modern digital world. The fundamental principles that power your smartphone were being explored in bronze and wood for thousands of years. It is a story of convergent evolution where different civilizations, completely unaware of each other, arrived at the same core ideas of information processing. A gear system in ancient Greece, a water clock in Alexandria, and a knotted string in the Andes were all grappling with the same fundamental challenge: how to build a machine that could think. This lineage reveals three powerful threads that weave through history. The first is the principle of the algorithm, a step-by-step procedure for solving a problem. The Babylonian eclipse predictions etched in clay were algorithms. The knot patterns on an Inca Quipu were a physical database algorithm. The sequence of pins on Heron's automated theater cylinder was a theatrical algorithm. Each of these was a set of instructions designed to be executed in a specific order to produce a reliable result, which is the exact definition of the software running on your computer right now. The second thread is the development of hardware, the physical system that runs the algorithm. This evolved from simple levers and water flows to the breathtaking complexity of geared mechanisms like the Antikythera device or Su Song's clock tower. These were the processors and memory units of their day, tangible hardware that could store a value, perform a calculation, and deliver an output. The precision of their gear teeth and the elegance of their escapements were the ancient equivalents of refining a microprocessor's transistors, a relentless drive for smaller, faster, and more reliable components. The final thread is the user interface, the way a human interacts with the machine. The Roman portable sundial with its sliding latitude scale was an interface. The Mayan calendar discs that priests rotated to correlate cycles were an interface. The astrolabe with its rotating retere and engraved coordinates was a masterpiece of user interface design, making complex astronomy accessible to a sailor on a rocking ship. This evolution shows a constant effort to make computational power more portable, more intuitive, and more accessible. Seeing this unbroken chain forces a dramatic shift in perspective. The digital age did not appear from nowhere. It is the latest chapter in a story that began when the first human used a notched stick to count the days. The same drive to automate, to calculate, and to model our world has been propelling us forward for millennia. Our silicon chips are simply the current answer to a very ancient question. This journey through 25 ancient mechanisms reveals a hidden history of computation, a continuous thread woven through millennia. From the celestial predictions of the Antikythera device to the automated stages of Heron, our ancestors demonstrated a profound grasp of mechanical principles we now associate with the digital world. They built machines that could process information, automate complex tasks, and solve problems with a sophistication that still inspires awe. The digital revolution was not a sudden explosion from nothing. It is the flowering of a seed planted in ancient workshops, a direct inheritance of computational thinking once embodied in bronze, wood, and water. The human drive to build tools that extend our minds is truly timeless. The next time you hold a smartphone or ask a digital assistant for the weather, Remember the intricate gears of a Greek planetarium or the knotted strings of an Inca Quipu. These were the original information processors, the first steps on a path that led directly to our modern world. I would love to hear which of these ancient computers surprised you the most. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this exploration of how past innovations connect to our technological present, be sure to subscribe for more journeys into historical mysteries.